Hello, DECA members. My name is Sara Sunny, and I'm your Texas DECA District 7 president. And today we have another Spotlights with Sara guest. This is going to be, I believe, episode 4. So we're slowly making it down, creating more content, and allowing more guests to come on. I have so many more people lined up, so I'm very, very excited to share this next guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself. So if you could just tell us what grade you're in, how many years you've been in DECA, and your officer position.
Hey guys, so my name's Sara Hancock. I'm a junior this year at Hoover High School in the state of Alabama. I'm the District 1 Vice President for the state of Alabama, and this is my third year in DECA.
So you're a junior?
Yeah.
Okay, me too. So we'll just get started kind of with talking about you. So I like to kind of bring up social media to start off because it's the way that I contact or people contact me about not only spotlights, but just in general. It's become such a great tool that DECA members too, but also just people in general have started to use to connect with people. And especially when we talk about DECA social media accounts, the amount of information that we can spread before we couldn't do that. There was a time where there was a website and people could visit it, but on social media, because virtually every single person's on it, it's so easy to post something that's like this, that is kind of learning about something else, or that's fun or content driven. So talk about your social media, kind of how you started on it and all those things.
So this is one of my favorite things to talk about because, like, as a lot of people know, I'm very, very big on social media. It's such a huge part of who I am as a DECA state officer. So we had another conference before the Emerging Leader Summit in July, just with like Alabama state officers from all of the CTSOs, and I remember we were like, I think it was there at least. We were leaving there, and we were just like, maybe it was ICDC, but we started social medias, and it was the first time that Alabama DECA had ever had every state officer had each had their own individual social media. But I remember leaving the conference back in like June, and I was like, okay, we have these accounts, but like we're not doing very much with them. We were posting like after ICDC, we were posting after that conference, but I was like, I feel like this is like I could be doing more.
Right.
And so since then I've been posting at least 5 days a week. I first started posting twice a day, like 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
which was insane. But now I have a schedule to where I post 5 days a week. And so for me, it's like the way to connect with my district as well as just the entire state of Alabama, and being able to connect with like all of the other state officers from all the other CTSOs and all of the like Alabama chapter, I mean all the DECA chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And so without that, like we wouldn't have been able to reach each other, like you had just said,
Right,
and like
right.
just like I wouldn't know the people that I do without it. And so it's such a huge part of DECA now, which is such a fun thing. But for me, we started it at ICDC, which was in April, but I really started posting back in June, and since then, I think everybody kind of loves it. They love the theme that I have on my Instagram.
Yes, it's literally like so coordinated. I look at it and I'm like, well, I guess mine's not as aesthetically pleasing. Um, but it is really, really great. And also just so when I took over the District 7, the Texas DECA District 7 Instagram account, first of all, just in general, having a personal DECA account versus running one from a district or a state officer position is quite different, because there are certain guidelines you have to adhere to. And usually there's some sort of posting schedule that's involved that you don't necessarily have to adhere to in your own account. So I know like we create a schedule every single month, and that's kind of the dates that we look at to post. And that's kind of where I try to be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I go on Canva, I create the templates. And I know for my personal tech account, the thing that kind of has a schedule is this series, roughly. I think I started doing it every week, even though I said that I was going to do it every other week. And then time kind of caught up, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm probably going to be doing this every other week. If not every week, we'll just kind of see how it goes. So I don't try to always quote myself with these type of things, but I want to always kind of put out new content. And that's the hardest thing to do, especially when sometimes there isn't new things to tell people. There are many times where people are looking for a new update, or that would be what you're expected to post, to say, here's a D7 update. I'm like, well, what do I write? Because there isn't really an update, especially when it was like early school year, there really wasn't much. It was kind of just whatever's going on at the time is within your own chapters, and District 7's just kind of starting to group together and all those different things. So I started just kind of looking at different ways to involve people. And I think that's kind of the best way to go about it. What do you think is going to be entertaining sometimes, rather than what's the most content I can put out? Because you stress yourself out if you do that. I remember I was just like, I have absolutely no idea what to tell them. I am freaking out right now because I have to get this many posts out. So I kind of took a deep breath from it. And I was like, what I think is going to be interesting to put on the social media. And I went from there. But you've mastered that. You kind of took trends that were going on outside of DECA, then brought them into DECA, or you just posted things from conferences that you went through, and it always turns out amazing. So, like, a round of applause to that, because genuinely one of the best accounts I've seen.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was
Thank
blown
you.
away by it. No, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no. So I think like finding things to post about is still so difficult.
Mhm.
Um, I really grab at like anything, but I actually one of my favorite things to like kind of go back on is not everybody knows the same amount of stuff that we do. And
Mhm.
so like, when it goes like I posted I think a couple weeks ago like just about some events that might people might know about, like people might not know about, like and we probably like I already knew all of them and I had already heard of all of them before, but I think it was a matter of just like those new members, those new and upcoming members that like have no idea what's going
Yeah.
on. Like that's kind of who I target. And so like I know I have a post coming up that's just like basic acronyms, like what does SBE stand for, what is ICDC, like CDC, all of the things, because not everybody knows those things. And so that's how I've been able to like post 5 days a week and
Mhm.
backtrack and get people like informed, and also posting about like certain things several times is super helpful. So like when we have conferences coming up, we're like remember to register, or like right now we're registering members, remember to sign up for DECA today. Like
Yeah.
I post about that like 9,000 times a day, but
Which is
so
actually a great tip. It really is,
yeah,
because I think one of our most recent posts on the D7 Insta page was, here's how many competitive events DECA has. For me, that's easy. I'm like, how do you not know? But like in your head, you just become so accustomed to certain
right.
things in the organization, where if somebody like said, what's SBE? I could just like that school enterprise, like it's your school store. I can immediately tell you that. But there are so many new members, and especially with the organization continuously growing, like literally exponentially, there's just so many more members than there were before. Those members have absolutely no idea half the time what they're talking about. And it's
Right.
it's great. And I think social media is like literally the best tool to inform them. Sometimes meetings, there's a lot of stuff going on at certain meetings. You don't understand all the information getting thrown at you. So taking a look at maybe not even necessarily a state officer or district officer's page, but also just like your school's DECA Instagram account.
Yes.
Great resources. And I have to say, I am really, really proud of the Wakeland DECA social media team right now, because they've done an incredible job of just keeping up with posting them out. And they're starting to become aesthetically pleasing too. They're like adding all the little graphics and everything. And I'm like, it looks great. So
No, I've seen
social
them
media,
everywhere.
yeah.
They're
I just
amazing.
I just love bringing up the topic of social media, because this is social media. And
Right.
right, we're really in that kind of digital age, and it really got my mind thinking about that. I think at ICDC my freshman year, when we switched to that Zoom platform, or I guess the virtual platform for competition that year, I immediately was like, I understood taking classes online. That was fine. But when it became about doing competition online and getting resources put out online, I was like, how are they going to pull this one off? I didn't understand how it was going to make any sense until social media. I was stalking my school's DECA Instagram account. I was continuously looking at it, looking for any source of information that I could grab at to help my team do better. And I think it's important that we continue to kind of look at those people that were like me, that were struggling, and they didn't, some schools just don't have the resources to inform every single member immediately. And even if you can get some of the basic information, like what is ICDC
Yeah.
and here's how to kind of compete out there, it just helps so, so much. So,
Yeah. Every time I think about it, like I think about me freshman year who like I was okay. So my kind of DECA story is I
uh-huh.
was forced into DECA by my teacher. No idea what it was, but she was just like,
Yeah.
you're going to do this and you're going to have so much fun. And so I like went to competition, and I was like one of 4 freshmen from my school, and like competition was in our library. So like nobody had any idea what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about her, and like she didn't know what any of this meant. She didn't know what like ICDC was actually like, or CDC, or anything like that. And so like for me, freshman year, like I would have loved to have all of this information out here. And so especially when it comes to like I'm doing the state office, like our state officer Instagram, as well as my own Instagram, and like and I'm helping out my chapter social media director, like with posting things and just different things like that, like targeting the people who have no idea what's going on, because I was the person that had no idea what was going on.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your DECA journey. It is kind of the purpose of Spotlights with Sarah. It's supposed to be spotlighting kind of the entire way, because the people that I put on here are people that are DECA success stories. They sometimes virtually went from absolutely having no clue what the organization was to some people who had a good understanding of what it was because of siblings or parents or whatever it was. But regardless of the fact, you start somewhere, and then these people have all ended up in incredible positions like yours. So congratulations on that, because it is such a big deal. I think people don't necessarily realize it when we're all talking on here. We try to be very kind of normal about it, but when you find out you get a position, you're freaking out. So I mean, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication to put yourself in that kind of role. So I know like every single person's reaction whenever I say congrats to them is, oh, like you kind of get a little bit awkward about it. I know I have, when people have congratulated me or saying, wow, that's so cool. But I'd like to sometimes just be self-appreciative of the things that you do. So talk about the journey and throw in kind of what was something that was your DECA high and a DECA struggle. I used to call them lows, which I don't think many of us have, but struggles in DECA definitely occur quite often. So
Right. So I mean I started it a little bit, but my freshman year I was like I went and we had so my 8th grade year was when COVID hit. And so going into freshman year, I was like, I'm so over this. Like I don't want any part of this. And so I was failing most of my classes, and like I did not care about school, like nothing. I like I wanted no part in DECA. I didn't even know what DECA was, but I was like, I don't want any like extracurriculars. Like I don't care about any of this.
Yeah.
But my only class that I wasn't like actually failing, like I was genuinely failing all of my other classes. The only class I wasn't failing was my business class. And so when my teacher found out that, like my advisor found out that I was failing all the rest of my classes, she was literally in shock. But she was the one that made me join DECA, just because I was doing so well in her class. And I guess she saw something in me at the time that I did not. And so she made me join, and at first I didn't really think like all that much of it. I was just like, okay, well, like I'm in the, like I paid the dues, like that's it, like I'm done for the year. And then somehow she like sparked the competitiveness inside me, because I'm very competitive, but she sparked that inside of me. And I was one of 2 freshmen in our entire, we have a like 300 like person chapter, and there were 2 freshmen that like placed at state, which was in our library, which was crazy. And from there I was like, okay, wait, like this is cool. Once I got the glass in my hand, you know. But from there we went to like the ICDC that was in our gym, which was still like none of that was still like all that exciting.
So this was because you guys were virtual, so you were competing virtually in the library. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys all kind of
it was all just because it was like COVID year.
Yeah.
Which was really unfortunate. But I don't know why I stuck with it, gotta be honest, but I'm so glad that I did, because my sophomore year I started out as the like finance director for my chapter. And I was the only like person in my grade that was a chapter officer. And then I later became the competition director after we lost our competition director. And then I didn't even know what a state officer was. But there was someone from last year that like was the state vice president. He was like one of my advisor's sons. And so she was like, okay, well, we need another state officer. And so she just like kind of asked me if I would be interested, and I was like, sure. Like, I don't know what it is, but sure. Um, and so I still didn't even really know what it was until I was like actually like running. um, like until I couldn't get out of it, I didn't know what it was.
Just kind of kept going along with it. You're like, okay, okay,
We'll
okay.
figure it out.
Whoa.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so then I like went and campaigned at the state conference, which was in person, and it was so exciting for me because I was like this is what it's all about. Like,
Yeah,
I've never actually like been to one of these before. And so I got District 1 vice president, and from there, like at first it was really, really hard, like for me being a state officer. And I think I already had so much going on, and then I didn't have a ton of time management, and I just like also wasn't okay. I also wasn't a huge fan of like working as a team. Like, I've always been a very independent person. Like, when it comes to competitive events, like I'm always the like individual event, whatever. And so I was like I really struggled for the first couple of months as a state officer, but it genuinely has completely changed my life. And I love the people that I like work with, and I've completely changed like as a person and team wise. Like, I feel like I can actually work with people now, and
and it takes a lot to be able to admit that. It does,
yeah,
because you want to just say, no, I can always do everything. But sometimes you're allowed to just be like, that doesn't work for me. And I mean, especially initially, which now you're working with the team, you're a state officer with the team, I'm assuming, are you still, yeah, you're still a chapter officer, you're still working with the team there. So there are times where it can be a struggle to kind of recognize there are people around you too, and you can rely on them and help. There were times for sure where I was consistently kind of like doing a lot of stuff by myself, and then I would overwork myself because I didn't realize that somebody else could help me with it. And part of it just comes from kind of wanting to prove yourself in a new position. It kind of just comes with the whole idea of, well, I have to be really good at this for them to take me seriously. And if I ask for somebody's help, they're not going to take me seriously. They're going to think I can't do it, when that's never the case. The realistic point of view is that you're allowed to rely on people because they're always going to be there to help you, especially in DECA. And we call it student-led, but it is really student team-led. There's never been just one person that's the head of a chapter or one person that's in charge of a state or a district. And I love that. I actually think it's amazing because it teaches people who maybe necessarily didn't work well with others to become and flourish and to work with others, because you're going to need that in every single thing that you do in the future.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, it literally took me, like, we got elected in February, and it took me until probably June when we were sitting at one of our the conference I was talking about earlier, and the speaker was just like, even when it's easier to work alone, there is a learning experience in working with those around you.
Right.
And it literally took me hearing those words to be like, this is a team. Like, this isn't just me. Like, this isn't about me. This is about us. Like, we have to work together.
Right.
And so I think that my teammates especially have helped me so much with growing as a person and like as a teammate. And they were so patient with me. And I think that like I don't thank them enough, but I really should, because I owe so much to them. They've helped me so much in so many different ways, more than they know. But especially as like even a chapter officer now, like I can see the difference between like I'm a state recognition director this year, and I was like finance and competition last year, but I can see a significant difference between the way I was working with them last year and the way I'm working with them this year.
Right. So I know, so I was the vice president of Wakeland DECA. I've said this before, but we don't have vice presidents of certain almost divisions. We just have our role play officers, our prepared/written event officers, and then there's a vice president and a president. So I was vice president my sophomore year, and we have about a 215, 220 member chapter. So it's pretty large, and it's exponentially going to grow this year because it's Orlando and everything. But I was put in that position. I wasn't an officer before then. So I didn't have the experience that most of the vice presidents prior to me had, where they were serving as a chapter officer for a year and then they became vice president So they already kind of had built that connection with the team, and with many of whom, if not more than half of that team, we had a 16 officer team that year. This year we have 14. I know it's a lot. But I was kind of put in that position, and I was trying to prove to the officers that they could rely on me, that I was good enough for it. Because at times I felt that, okay, I don't have this already built trust with them where they're going to come to me if they have a question. And it was hard. It was very hard. But I had an amazing president to look up to, Caitlin Opalapati, if you're watching this. She was a state officer. I think she was the VP of Career Development for Texas DECA. And she kind of helped. I kind of saw what she was doing in the sense of how she led our chapter and how she kind of designated and delegated and worked through things. And I started to realize that sometimes I just need to talk to them. And I was just kind of working so much on making sure the behind the scenes stuff was perfect, that if I wasn't talking to them upfront about some of those things that I needed from them and that they could ask me for, it was never going to get done. Because if the communication isn't there, it's never going to work. And so I was, kind of overworking myself, doing a lot of different things. I was in the middle of campaigning for district office. So I was trying to do these other plates, but I also just really wanted to connect with this officer team, because they're the people that I probably spent so much time with in that year. Just because, school store shifts, going to conferences, going to events like the Mavs game or Dallas Stars or whatever it was. And so I really wanted us to be able to talk. And I kind of felt like the outlier because I was the sophomore. I was serving in an executive officer position. So it was like, okay, how do I start to talk to them as friends first? And it took a while, but I mean, sometimes it was easier because some of the officers had worked with me prior when I was just a freshman competitor. But by ICDC last year, I saw the officers that were there and I felt like they were some of my closest friends. Like right. I genuinely felt like that I relied on them so much through the year that there was even like an officer or two where I wasn't very close with at the beginning, or maybe they just didn't like me or whatever, or my head was thinking that they didn't like me because of whatever reason I made up. But by the end at ICDC, and I saw these seniors that were leaving, I was emotional. I was so emotional because I knew that these were people that I had, created bonds with, I relied on as a team. And by banquet, and they were giving their speeches, I was full on like tearing up. I was like, I didn't realize I loved you that much, dude. But like, that was kind of what was happening. So I keep in contact with some of them, but it just takes a second to kind of realize the progression to make. And are you the first? I think you're the first junior that I've spoken to on.
Oh my God, I'm honored.
Is Liv a junior? I don't know. Okay. But regardless of the fact, you relate to a lot of the things that I relate to, because it's hard to kind of be put into a position early on sometimes, and to be kind of a senior member and just immediately in some sort of officer position. And I think you said you were the only person in your grade who had that position.
Yeah.
So luckily I had a few other sophomores, but I was the only person who was an executive officer my age. So I was just kind of put into it. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing initially. It was very much like, how do I do this? And I even told my advisor that a few times. I literally told him, like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, and I'm gonna need a little bit of help. But he believed in me. He thought that I could do it, which is why he put me in that position. So I just think that sometimes as officers, we try to cover up that it's hard, but it's okay to accept that there are struggles with it. You just have to work around them, and it helps you grow, because I feel so much more confident than I ever was before.
I think one of the main reasons I'm so able to say that like I've grown as a person is because I can acknowledge that there was a problem, and that then I was open to fix it, and I was open to be better.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like what you said about like seeing them as a friend before you saw them as an officer. And I think that that's been such a huge thing on our officer team. I think that we jumped straight into work so fast that we had to like backtrack and be like, you're a person before you're a state officer. Or like even with our chapter officer team, you're a person before you're a chapter officer.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that's something that a lot of people have to can be like, okay,
You have to
we
look at it and say
yeah,
that
like we
for
need to
sure.
be friends before anything
And
else.
I remember, I think one of the first things the District 7 district director had told us, and the district coordinator, who happened to be mother and daughter. And the first thing that they kind of told us was that you're going to work so much better if you're friends. I think we were on Zoom. We hadn't even met in person except for actually campaigning, which we had like 5 seconds with each other before we had to leave with our chapters. We were just kind of on stage. We got announced. I closed to the conference. And I spoke because we had recently gotten elected and I'd seen them at their booths. But when you're campaigning, you're kind
You
of
don't like,
you don't
yeah.
you don't congregate. No, I mean it's just human nature. You're
You're,
not going.
you're
You're kind
supposed
of
to be in
competing
the
against
booth.
them, right? You're very polite. You're very civil. I respected a lot of their campaigns. I saw it and I thought they were amazing. But it is, first of all, kind of a switch to realize half of these people could be people that I have to be on a team with.
Right. And
So
I
you
didn't
have to
think
realize that.
about that. Like
No,
thinking
yeah.
back, like that didn't even go through my head.
And it's hard to, and especially like now that I think about it, I was like, okay, thank God I was nice to all those people because
Yeah.
I don't know what was going to happen if we didn't. But the first thing that she kind of told us when we had our first Zoom call was that last year's officer team, they were all kind of like best friends. And if you guys want this team to really be the best that it can be, you have to be friends. It's just how it works. There has to be that kind of chemistry there. She said that there are teams in District 7 that weren't necessarily the best of friends, but I mean, they were fine with each other. They just didn't hang out like anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they worked, they were fine, but you saw so much more charisma in the teams that were genuinely close. And we have something called the Texas DECA Leadership Summit that all of the district officers go to, that the state officers kind of coordinate. And last year it was in, not even last year, a few months ago, it was in Austin or Round Rock, Texas. And it was an amusement park almost. It was a hotel, but they had a water park. They had an arcade. It was supposed to be a way for us to connect. Did we go to leadership conferences and just workshops? Yes. That's what DECA is. But I never felt like I was there for work. Like, was I working and prepping stuff? Absolutely. But that was the moment where I felt close to my team. Like I was talking to them and I realized that this is absolutely amazing. So I loved it. That was kind of my favorite thing. So next, you talked a lot about being an association officer, which I feel like I've actually learned a lot from you in the sense of how you worked with your team and how you grew. What event do you compete in?
So I have kind of switched every year.
Uh-huh.
So freshman year I did principles of finance, and then sophomore year I did hospitality and tourism professional selling, and then this year I'm doing community awareness project. So
Okay.
kind of all over the place.
No, I mean it's great. I think it's good to kind of learn about different things just as much as it's good to stick to one event. If there's something to be said for trying out different things and kind of learning different skill sets from those events. So um that's just kind of been great. And so you were at ICDC last year.
Yeah.
Did you qualify?
For ICDC?
Yeah, were you there for
Yeah.
just okay.
Was,
So it's hard to manage competition and doing officer things. It can be, yes. And I've said this multiple times. It's almost two different sides, like of the same coin. They're both DECA, but they're wildly different in the sense of how what you're doing as an officer versus what you're doing as a competitor, and having to balance those things can be hard as well. So, especially at ICDC, I don't think I was doing very much officer related things. I was doing voting delegate things though, which were kind of co-aligned with each other. And so I think there were a few of those sessions that I had to miss because I like texted our district president or not, excuse me, state president. And I said, yeah, we qualified for finals. I'm going to be practicing for 5 hours today. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to the session. So that's just kind of funny. But how was it kind of like for you, ICDC competition? How'd it go?
ICDC ICDC for me was a little bit of a mess. I was running everywhere all of the time, and I kind of forgot to take a breath the entire time. And like going back to like what you were kind of saying earlier of like you never felt like you were working and you just kind of were having fun. I think I was forgetting to have fun.
Yeah.
And so I was just like trying to be so many different people in so many different places that I forgot to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so I like that's probably one of my biggest like not necessarily regrets, but like biggest piece of advice I would give to like upcoming state officers or just whoever, remember to like enjoy it.
To enjoy it.
That's what it's all about. Like DECA is supposed to be fun, and I think that I like forgot to take a breather and I didn't let it be fun.
Yeah.
I was going in so many places, and not all of our like state officers were competing, and so there were only a few of us that were, and my schedule was very different than some of the other people's, and so I was always needing to be in two places at once. Meant that I was running back and forth from the hotel and running back and forth from like the stadium and the like center, World Congress Center. So I think for me it wasn't all that like glamorous and amazing.
Right.
But
which is unfortunate, but
yeah,
hopefully this next year.
oh for sure.
I mean, it's
Like,
Orlando. I really hope it does. But I mean, that's not to say I wasn't stressed. I was definitely stressed at competition. And I've said this before, right before we competed at finals, I was freaking out. And I try to be the relatively cool person when I'm about to compete, but it was finals at ICDC. It was the first year that I was competing in person, so the adrenaline feels different. It's very easy to be calm behind a computer screen. But when you're sitting there with every other kid at the Georgia World Congress Center and you're about to walk in with the blue curtain next to you, it's scary. And I think honestly the scariest part is having like to set up your stand in your computer and whatever else you have with you right before you compete. I was just like, set it down, throw it. Okay. Yeah. So I will say that's what I love having teammates for. We all had a different job. So one of us had the poster, one of us had our copy for paper, one had our slideshow presentations. We just like as soon as they said go, it was there.
yeah.
But it is stressful. Go ahead.
That's one of the things that like it's hard to be like in an individual event because you don't have other people to keep you number one grounded, but also you're doing everything by yourself.
Yeah.
And so like when I was running around, like I was by myself, and at that point I like there wasn't like I was talking about earlier, I wasn't super like team oriented yet, and so I couldn't rely, or like what not couldn't, but I wasn't relying on my state officer team as much as I should have been. And like I was by myself for my competitive events, and all of like my chapter friends, like they were in very different places than I was. I was with the team, and then I was competing, and then I was here and there and there. And so not having teammates is that is the one downside, really.
It is, yeah. But there's also, you have the possibility to just say, I won because of myself or I lost because of myself. There's no one else to blame for something that goes wrong, which does help you as a person too. So I'm also on my school's varsity debate team, but I compete solo there. So I don't do a partner event, it's very ironic because a lot of people will come up to me and say, do you love working in a team or do you like working alone? I was like, well, I kind of do both. So I'm kind of fine either way now. But
I'm a huge fan of working by myself, like especially when it comes to competitive events, just because I'm so competitive. And that way I can put it on me. But just as a matter of like how chaotic it was, that would be where I needed someone like right there.
I will say though, so when I do debate, I don't know, I feel like the competition is just different. It's very head to head. Whereas in DECA, you're not, you don't see somebody else talking in front of you to argue with you or to do argumentative things with you. In debate, it is very head to head. And so when I compete by myself, everything that I say in response to that person is because of myself. So that was kind of when I explained to them that it's just different. I have the opportunity to plan exactly what I'm going to say in DECA and just go with it, or even in a role play, you still have the general possibility to know kind of what you're going to say. But in debate, it was very much kind of the idea of, if I'm going to go directly against this person, anything I say has to be on me because I'm talking to them face to face. So that was kind of like that's the only thing I could kind of procure out of why I did what I did. It's still kind of weird in my head. I was like, I don't know why I did that, but that was kind of the best explanation I could come up with for myself. Like, do I like working in a team or do I like working alone? I will say working alone does have its perks as well. You have the idea to kind of do what you want. And the way that your brain thinks of it, it just works out that way. Sure. So, and I like the idea of being able to blame only yourself and not, automatically blaming somebody else if something goes wrong, because every single person who's ever worked in a team is guilty of that.
You're the one that's
right. Yeah. Or even if it's everyone's fault, you're going to pinpoint it at somebody else but yourself. So there are some highlights with that, but we have 2 minutes left. I told you 2 minutes by really, really fast. I absolutely hate it, but I'm gonna you can kind of combine both if you want. So the last 2 things are kind of your most fun thing that you've ever done in DECA, funniest moment, and just one last thing of advice that you love to give to members.
Okay, so most fun thing. Okay, the Emerging Leader Summit back in July in Salt Lake City, Utah has easily been like one of my favorite trips that I've ever done. And it was so much fun just meeting all of the other state officers. So I have to say that either that or the power trip last year, because that was what got me into like DECA and like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it got me excited. So those 2 things have to be my top 2 like most favorite, most fun things ever.
Going to power trip this year?
I think so.
I'll see you there.
I believe so, yes. We're still working out the details, but
Okay.
and one more piece of advice would just be like, I was saying it earlier, but like slow down. Like not everything is hitting, it's not going to hit you all at once. Like take a breath, take time to enjoy where you are, whether that be just as a chapter member or a chapter officer or a state officer or a region vice president or whatever. Like take time to enjoy it, because that is what DECA is about. And so yeah, and feel free to reach out to anyone like at any time, especially those older than you or people that are like super involved.
We're here to help, and DECA members are really good at just being accommodating. So
yes,
actually
we are a family.
Yeah, we are a family. It's a great spot to end off this episode of Spotlights with Sarah. So thank you so much. Why is there like a motorcycle?
Spotlights with Sarah and Sarah.
Yes, I was about to say that is like literally the perfect episode right here. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna keep her on for just a second here unless Zoom cuts me off, but I will see you guys in the next one.